All right. Good to go. Episode 35. We have on Premia, Cozy, and DK from Premia. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Sito, Ali, pleasure. Thanks for having us.
All right. We talked about it a bit, kind of like how we got started, the different camps in crypto as the space kind of developed. I wanted to ask, I want to hear from both of you guys, but we'll start with Cozy on like your history in the space, kind of how you got started, how you got involved with Premia, and maybe toss in a few bits about some good moments of when you were at exit liquidity.
Yeah. So I started working in crypto in like 2017. Working from like trading desk to non-custodial wallets, non-custodial exchanges, and then that kind of led into DeFi. With Premia, I met DK and a couple of the other founding team members while we were just kind of like volunteering and working as community members, contributing to a project in like 2019, late 2019 or early 2020. And throughout that time period, DK, Froggy, Lumio started talking about, I believe, futures products built off of Sushi Swap. And from there, kind of led down the path of options because there we were looking at like, what kind of financial products don't exist at the moment. And there was no options market for altcoins. There was like Hedgic and DK was open around yet. Open may have been around. But there really wasn't much. So Premia V1 was a peer-to-peer options market that supported, I think, 17 of like the top altcoins at the time. So all like the DeFi 1.0 stuff, Sushi, Uni, Yearn, stuff like that. And that was like a novel idea, but we kind of quickly realized that people don't know how to price options, and there was a request from the community to build something that would assist in doing that, and that kind of led to V2, which was the AMM pool to peer path. It worked great for what it is. It's kind of we think of it as like the beta to V3 or Premia Blue. But with Premia V2, you could deposit into pools as an underwriter, and then you would be underwriting the options for the AMM. What we had built with each of these that was kind of unique was there was a supply and demand pricing function tied to these pools. So if there was high utilization rate or a lack of capital in any of the pools, then it would incentivize deposits by by over the market premiums by charging more for people buying those options. And then on the other end, it would provide under the market premiums when there was an excess of liquidity to incentivize people to buy options. So there was this kind of equilibrium that took place to help fairly, quote unquote, price the options. It's great in theory, but it doesn't really give you any optionality, no pun intended. You can't choose ranges that you have no choice in what you're underwriting. So that like level of risk is fit for like DeFi degens and like retail that want to speculate. It's not really tailored to pro-tail or market makers, institutions, things like that. So there were a lot of requests when we were kind of marketing our product around for to be able to deposit into ranges or to be able to underwrite ranges. So that kind of sparked, and led to V3. Oh, cool. And in V3, we've kind of started from the ground up and built a fully functional like options exchange. So in V3, where V2 was pool to peer and it was permissioned, like you couldn't add anything you wanted. There were certain restrictions that were on marketplaces and for the markets. One of those being that they needed a Chainlink Oracle. So that kind of limits you to, what assets have kind of stood the test of time, have garnered enough liquidity and attention to be on, X amount of exchanges, have pretty high trading volume, which is great, for users who are looking for assets that um, they are speculating will be around for, a more significant amount of time. Usually assets with that meet that criteria are of a certain class, you could kind of say. But what you miss is kind of like the attention catalyst and like base attention layer that forms around new assets, or like their 0 to 1 moment. And that's something that Uniswap, we think, brought to like altcoin spot markets, where it didn't exist before. And I saw that kind of firsthand because I was working on like the exchange side of things in my previous jobs when I was working on like the more quote unquote corporate, you could say, side of crypto stuff. And you understand and see like the process that protocols and projects go through to get listed on the centralized exchanges, and the not loopholes, but hurdles they have to go over and get through, as well as on the other end, what the exchanges or, wallets, non-custodial swaps, like what they're looking at in order to like list these assets, or to put pressure on the centralized exchange to list the assets because they have so much demand from their customers, which does happen. A lot of times there's influence from third-party services because of demand. It's not just, like a protocol is paying a centralized exchange or something like that. So, you see this like need for listing and this kind of cumbersome process that used to happen. And with Uniswap, that they kind of removed all of that friction. And it was like, if you have a project, you have an idea. I kind of thought of it as like the era of ideas, because like if you had an idea, you created a token, you could launch it, and it was like very simple. It's kind of like how like SoundCloud, like, helped kill some of the music industry because artists were able to just independently put up their own music, and they could, get clout and kind of blow up on YouTube and SoundCloud and start their own careers. They didn't need to go and, like whore themselves off to a record label right away and get a deal and then start getting promoted and be in debt. So like Uniswap kind of did that for like tokens in a funny way. So Premia V3 aimed to kind of do that for not only that's one of the things for options, because there was nowhere where you could permissionlessly deploy a new options market. And on top of that, if you're using something like Premia V2, you're very limited to what you could underwrite. Out 90 days max, and limited to your assets. So with V3, yeah, fully parameterized, modular from the base layer exchange. You could create a market for any asset that has a spot market and has an oracle of really any kind. We'll have a margin layer, and then we'll have a vault layer. So Premia V2, you can kind of think of as just a vault. And in Premia V3, given the base layer exchange that will be there, Premia V2 will be moved onto or on top of Premia V3, and we'll call it an underwriter vault. So if people are looking for kind of passive yield or to just passively underwrite options, they'll still have the option to do that, just like they did in V2, but without the same level of risk, I guess you could say, because there's now competing inventory sources for pricing, which should keep pricing from falling too far on the outer bounds of either direction. DK, you can go ahead and talk a bit.
Awesome. Yeah, just background on myself. I spent 10 years out of college working at a bulge bracket bank on the broker-dealer side. Spent time in multiple different countries, but during that time of the bulge bracket bank, spent some time on the listed derivative side, some time in majority of my time actually in big data analytics, and then I've always been in the crypto space. Used to make some like videos right around like early ETH days. The first video I ever made was right around the DAO hack. Sold way too early on the first bull run. I thought a 3x was nice. When my entry on all of my ETH was $9. And then kind of left the space a little bit because I'm sure, as everyone kind of understands, your brain kind of perceives a lost opportunity as like an actual loss of capital, right? So I left the crypto space for quite a bit, and then I spent some time in Europe. In Europe, I found myself out with more time, got back to the crypto space pretty heavily. That rolled into COVID. I moved back to the States right before COVID, and then prior to DeFi summer, I was getting in the nitty gritty. I met Cozy in that NFT project they was speaking about, which we were all exit liquidity for, even though it was an airdrop and we were the ones that were working on it. We were super bullish on ourselves, right? So, when our lead solidity engineer, when he kind of entered the project, he didn't even get the airdrop, so he had the market buy-in, and that marked pretty much the top of that market was when we had a lead solidity engineer. Anyways, we were super bullish on ourselves. And then, one thing led to another. We were talking about SushiSwap futures products. And then we're like, well, we can do options probably better, especially altcoin options. And that weekend, we started drawing up user stories. And then, fast forward to February 2021, we launched a MVP of peer-to-peer, found out no one knows how to price options, pivoted to peer-to-pool in November of 2021. And we've been working on V3 ever since. So we got here. That's how I met Cozy. We're all airdrop when form channels,
When Google
Awesome.
form.
Cozy, any moments other than the one DK mentioned where you were exit liquidity? I also want to hear, you guys seem a lot, you guys seem like you've been in the space for a while. I kind of want to hear, we haven't, me and Ollie have been in the space for what seems like a while, but in comparison, not as long. And I'm kind of curious, I don't know what things were like back then, what kind of camps you guys were participating in, what the arguments on CT were, just kind of some highlights that that are stuck in your brain from those moments.
And on ethos for sure. I'll let you go first, Cozy.
What was the first question? Because I got kind of lost in the reminiscing when you started talking about. Let me hear about the old stuff.
Just some exit liquidity moments.
Exit liquidity.
Yeah.
The exit liquidity moments I probably remember the most are from. There was a small part of DeFi summer after DSD and ESD, where there were a lot of seigniorage tokens that were being launched. And there were some really really out there ideas, like some that were tied to the price of gold, or the golden ratio was being used, a lot of weird shit like that. I lost a bunch of money on the forks of I did well on ESD, and then from DSD through a few forks of that, I lost a good amount of money. And other than that, I haven't really lost money in pools, making trades, anything like that, because I've been pretty conservative after this past run up. I don't think very few people sold the exact top, but I got out pretty close to for a lot of my stuff, and have been pretty selective on what I've aped since then. I think preserving your capital is the hardest part about trading, that a lot of people overtrade, and that's how they lose money. And when you kind of been around for a little bit, you understand that there's a million opportunities, so there's no need to FOMO into a missed opportunity. You just can, get back in the grind, get back in the trenches, and find the next 10, 20, even if it's just a 5x, you're still outperforming every other market that exists. So you hit a few of those a year and you're pretty well off, especially in these types of markets. And when it's a bull market, then, it's a different story. You can just throw a dart at a ticker on the chart and, not overtrade, and you're going to be fine as well. So the only other things that are stand out to me is in my very early days, I had gotten hacked and lost 10 BTC. And this was before it really started to run up. So like it didn't really eat me alive until it hit 20K. And then I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so stupid for doing that. And it was an Electrum hack. Like there were, back then it was like all proof of work coins, and there weren't a lot of, just weren't like alts like there are now. There weren't tokens that were launching on Ethereum. It was just like a ton of proof of work tokens. So every alt was running some algorithm that they were saying was like the new like fastest or the highest security or something like that. And there was just a lot of spec mining. So like I think the two groups back then were Bitcoiners and just shitcoiners. You're either Bitcoin maxi or you're a shitcoiner. And until the first Bitcoin fork happened, well, maybe before that. But then there was kind of like two Bitcoin camps. So there were only two. You're a Bitcoiner or a shitcoiner, and then it went into like you are a big blocker or a small blocker Bitcoiner, or you're a shitcoiner.
What camps were you in at the time?
I was always a shitcoiner. I was like an early miner. I still have like some decommissioned rigs downstairs. So a lot of the people that I met kind of early on were from, like the shitcoin camp, and were spec miners. Not So Fast was like one of the earlier guys I remember talking to. But yeah, times were much different because things weren't easy. Like the UX was really, really bad. So if you wanted to be involved, you kind of had to put some effort in. And my contrarian take is that that's good. Like, we should, I don't think that like having UX that's up to par with Web 2 stuff is always a good thing, because there's inherent risks that people aren't accustomed to, right? Like everyone should be used to controlling their own money and to like being in charge of their own things. But we've all been so conditioned to give up control of everything that we like think that it's difficult, or we make excuses for like why we shouldn't or why it's okay to trust other people. But I think history has shown like time and time again that like you shouldn't trust anyone, that even the best people in your life like sometimes do you wrong, and like it's up to you whether or not you forgive and forget, or like you're bitter and you hold a grudge. But everyone's human, and humans make mistakes and learn from them or don't. So yeah, it's always been like a core ethos of mine to like not trust anyone, like make them prove they're trustworthy, and make them like earn respect through proof of work and like reputation and things like that. So yeah, times are much different now because I think of the UX improvements, and obviously like the amount that the space has grown, and like we've grown into building products that are more aligned with traditional Web 2 products, social media apps, things like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword.
Awesome.
We build products for everyone, so like we focus on UX at Premia, but it doesn't mean I have my own takes about how I want to use things.
A little bit of getting into some like morality there as well. As much as I would like this to be like a philosophy podcast, we don't get enough of that.
We'll do it on the back end. We'll go back to that later.
Yeah, that'll be part 2. DK, what about you, man? What was your like early day? What did your earlier days look like? Where did you find yourself coming back to time and time again?
Gem hunting. No. I mean, I spent like when I was in Europe, I spent 3 years in Europe. And that's when I like really dove back into things. Like I'd never been on 4chan before, and that's like when I dove back into dove into biz for like the first time. And I think biz is all noise now, but back in 2016 time, there was a lot of alpha in biz, even though the market was, maybe 2020-ish, 2019 maybe. There was a lot of alpha there. Not so much anymore. But yeah, started building out like, Twitter followers that always constantly had alpha. There was obviously Biz. Left Reddit. I hate Reddit now. I'm not a fan of Reddit. I feel like a lot of the signal was lost in Reddit as well. But yeah, I was just constantly chasing stuff. I was looking at like what makes sense to me from a technology perspective and doing like insanely deep fundamental analysis on those, right? And so there were a bunch that I had picked back then, and then during the bull run, were rewarded with, and then you transfer into capital preservation, similar to Cozy. But one thing that always kind of resonated was like at Premia we call it privacy forward, but like some of the like anon based ethos, that was always something that was like big within our crew. And I know at the time, especially during DeFi summer, it was back and forth between if you were doxxed or not, and then like stuff like
the faces versus the masks.
Yeah, and Sushi didn't quite help in that regard, but that's always been something that's kind of stuck with us, and that's where a lot of our crew that we initially met online, that we that are like close friends in the space still to this day, are all similar. When we started Premia back in the day, the founding members had maybe spoken on the phone to each other, like, I don't know, less than a dozen times, and had never met in person. Obviously it's changed a lot now. We've been building on the space for quite some time, but it was just, that's the way it was back then. And like my first I don't give too much away, but my first Web3 call was with people that were also very prominent in the anon space of a project that was massive during DeFi summer. And they all joined. We joined in like some weird anonymous Chinese video chat room, and they all had like scary
changers on.
Yeah, scary faces and voice modulators and stuff. And I'm like, is this what DeFi is? Like, is it all like this? It's not. But still, it was funny and intimidating, but also kind of exciting. But yeah, that's where it started. Now I'm like, I'm pretty open about what my portfolio is. It's Premia and Ethereum. I'm a boomer now. I don't really have the time to do all that gem hunting anymore. I don't really have the time to kind of spend in that fundamental analysis anymore, unfortunately. But those times were fun for sure.
Is that where like 3anons came out? I wanted to ask a bit about that. It sounded like you were leading into that.
I mean, I can lead into it. So yeah, so our like maybe it's real, maybe it's not. I can't confirm or deny. But yes, so powered by anons, or 3anons, which powered by anons like more like the dev side of things, and 3anons more of the venture capital side of things. However, I mean, there's more than 3anons, but it's still funny because 3anon Capital it was 3AC at the time, and 3 Arrows, still existed back then. So we've placed some better bets than they did, I guess. But yeah, it was just it's just a group that we had operated out of. Sometimes investment comes out of that entity, but it started as a meme. But we've been building on it ever since.
Yeah, it originally was talking about like early groups, like when DeFi like 1.0 kind of rolled around. Some of my closer friends from the 2017 like run and era were like Icebergy, Carbon Based, Screen Times, some other some of those guys on Twitter, Stoic Savage, Top Tick, and we all stayed pretty close like through the bear market. So when DeFi summer came around, we were all kind of like DMing each other individually about things, and then me, Carbon, and Icebergy created a group of the 3 of us, and I think we called it like the Honest Farmers Union. And it was just like a way for the 3 of us to kind of share like the things the gems we were finding and like projects we were looking at together. And then when 3AC kind of came around, like we knew that they weren't like copy trading us, but it almost seemed like they were, because we were like really early to all the NFT stuff. And a lot of the like projects ended up like picking up on the DeFi side of things, like we were earlier on. So I made the 3Anons account originally just to like make memes about like how we were better traders than them. and after like a couple of days of it being live, someone wrote an article saying that like a new fund popped on the scene, like investing in risky things. So we like, quickly came up with a banner and a website and like threw it up to like make it more real. And then like, we started getting like offers and stuff, and people knew that we like operated out of that. Like me, the only rule is that there needs to be a group of 3. So, so yeah, there's like groups of there's more than 3Anons that are there. It's just like we have kind of kept it to where there's like I think 9 maybe. Yeah, but like DK said, like investments started coming out of it because people knew that who was kind of involved in it, and that we had been doing like angel things on the side. So it just made sense for us to kind of collectively look through things and deploy capital.
Yeah, we have to talk about Premia. Last thing before we get there is I think this is just popped up on your Twitter for Eden, AEDX. Not sure what that is, but it looks really interesting. So I thought I'd ask.
Dope. Yeah. So I think similar to how you guys started Exit Liquidity, it's just something me and DK are starting up. That'll be kind of a daily like news show or cover macro stuff, things happening in crypto. If people want to join us, have guests come on, but keep it pretty informal. Obviously going over formal information, but keep it pretty informal and just a chat, because just like you guys were like, there's not enough people that are kind of covering what's happening day to day in crypto, what, new shitcoins are getting a lot of attention, and, won't be any type of like charting or shitcoin chilling, but just talking about like where kind of the attention is shifting daily in the crypto space.
Yeah, that's awesome. It definitely feels like none of the media is like represents CT at all. That's kind of our understanding of like the stuff you'll see on YouTube with like people enter the space, and the first person they'll see is like BitBoy Crypto or something.
Yep.
And like that's just not CT. So
Moon
I'm glad
Carl,
you guys are doing that.
BitBoy Crypto, stuff like that.
Altcoin Daily or whatever.
Yeah, all that kind of shit, like that all exists. And like yeah, I mean, you guys already know because you're doing the same thing. Like, there's just not enough people that are out there kind of talking about where the actual attention in crypto is at. You have news outlets that will write articles on it, but they're pretty biased, and they're biased in a way that's usually because of money that's been put towards them, or lack of kind of on the ground information that you kind of get when you're like actively involved in the space.
I feel like that kind of speaks to what you said earlier about like good UX not necessarily being like a prerequisite, or it's like the same concept. Whereas like if you get into crypto and you're presented with all that stuff, you kind of have to have the wherewithal and the drive to be able to dig deeper, to like actually get past it to a point where you can figure out what's going on and like really be a part of the community. I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of us went through when we first got into it, and I think it was valuable in the long run, even if it was tough at first.
Yeah, I've talked about this on a stream in the past, but I got added to this group chat of like older guys in my city. They're all a bunch of business owners that are into crypto, and a guy who I used to talk with, who was in that group, added me to it. He's like, I know everything that you do, and like, I think you'd be an asset here. And what amazes me is, when there's a lot of money at stake, and you want a piece of that, people will like, they won't learn the how, everything, or the why everything, is doing what it does, but they will quickly learn how to go from point A to point D, and get back. these guys were they were on BSC, you know, they were pancake swap, like, you know, kings, and we're farming the shit out of, like, you know, every like shitcoin Ponzi that like I'd ever heard of on BSC, like things I had never I had no idea existed. Like these guys were in like making killings on. And you know, it opened up my eyes to, like, you know, this, I don't know, contrarian idea that, like, you know, we all want good UX because I think as a user, like, you know, you want a smooth, good looking app that, like, you know, just works like butter, because that's what we're used to now. We're used to apps that are made by huge corporations and Macs that have, you know, insanely powerful hardware inside of them, and everything just fucking is like butter now. So when you get something that doesn't work like that, you start getting frustrated and anxious. So we want that, but yeah, the like UX hurdle, I think, because it makes you like have to learn or have to want it. You know, it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, it's well said. Cool. So getting into Premia, V1 was peer-to-peer, V2 peer-to-pool, and V3 hybrid. I'm wondering if, like, throughout the years, throughout that process, there were any particular like innovations that you guys saw in the option space or just the broader like DeFi space that you found a little bit more compelling that may have like snuck its way into the Premia infrastructure? Was there anything in specific that jumped out throughout the development process?
Uniswap V3.
Yeah, it's kind of a layup. I was hoping for that one.
DK.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so there's a lot of stuff that we brought back in V3 that existed in V1. We're just I guess we're like too early for the market. Plus, there were some constraints on the infrastructure side. Like we launched V1 before like layer 2s were a thing, right? And so like we got the run up on gas, and like to cancel an open order was going to cost you like $80 to $100 in Ethereum gas fees, and like that's not sustainable, right? Like especially if you were trading in less than like $30,000 an option size, then like it made no sense to even put up an order if you're gonna have to change it the next day because of a little bit of volatility, right? And so there were quite a few infrastructure issues. Like account abstraction didn't exist. Obviously, layer 2s didn't exist, so the cost of gas was extremely high. We were constantly running up into like contract size limits, and at the time there wasn't really like an elegant way to expand that contract size. Like that was near the beginning of proxies to begin with. So there's been a lot of development on the technology side that maybe users don't see. So a lot of things that we're bringing back is like our referrals. We're bringing back so like we had OTC. Our peer-to-peer was OTC. It was straight OTC. You put up your order. You could mint it beforehand and put it up, or you could mint on
demand,
on match, right? So if someone came in and bought your option, then we actually had unlocked. You had already approved your wallet's ability to spend, right? So if someone matched your order, then it would actually take the coins from that individual's wallet, right? Which was like an early form of kind of what account abstraction was, but it still was like an odd user experience to do the mint from, right? It's kind of, we pretty much took a lot of the OpenSea design mechanisms of how, filling an order in OpenSea kind of works and how we performed our OTC. But yeah, in terms of like super low cost chains in the technology space, Arbitrum Nova. So our order book lives in Arbitrum Nova. Right. And to this day, I'm pretty sure we're still the only one that's even plans on doing an on-chain order book. All the other options exchanges are typically off-chain. So ours is on-chain. However, we bring in the hybrid approach of, APIs to connect. So if you're a programmatic trader, we can still have the order book on-chain. You can check to see that you're not being censored. You can check to see that you're not being front-run. However, we'll cover all the costs for you because it's insanely cheap to cover on Arbitrum Nova. But at the same time, if you just want to build a bot that lives, on a server that you host, then easy peasy for you to do that, right? And so yeah, we brought in a lot of the developer tooling because the developer tooling has come a long way. And I think that also the pure decentralization maxi ethos has kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. I think people are willing to do trade-offs, especially when it's their capital that's up for grabs, right? So if you launch a permissionless, contract and it can't be upgraded and your capital's in there, then if there's a hack, you're screwed, right? So you can't do upgrades. You can't, there's ways that you can do it. Our engineers are kind of the opinion that, upgradability might be the future. You just have to do it in a way that is, you're protecting yourself from like any sort of, not short-sightedness, but like, especially in the OPSEC world, right? So like exposing a private key. If you could upgrade a smart contract and it's one of your dev wallets and they lose their private key, then you know that the smart contract can get rigged. So as long as you're putting like time locks in place or governance control in place, I think the upgradability will continue to live. That's the path that we're kind of taking. We took out all these feature sets. We've grown the team, right? So when we started, we're at 4, and now we're roughly 25 full time. So our research group, which is is quite an asset for us. They've been able to like iterate and test out new ideas and stuff over the course of the almost 2 years now at this point, and kind of see like what are the trade-offs. We've been having a lot of like discovery with different types of users, right? So like V2 is predominantly a retail only platform because you cannot really parameterize options that you're selling, right? And so that was like one of the biggest ticket items in V3 is like you have to fully parameterize, but we don't want to lose the AMM elements, right? So we need to have a composable, a product that allows you to trade order book, but then also trade versus an AMM, right? And so we built that, and then we needed to take into account like if you're only trading on Deribit, what's going to make someone come over from Deribit, right? Like it's one thing if we try to inform and educate people that are already doing DeFi perps, right? That's a user group that is, I would say, it has a relative level of complexity or financial literacy. They understand the products. Maybe they haven't moved over because the one-click buy is so simple. So we're doing a lot in the education side of things on, to bring over people from the perp world, but then also like you got to, the main market share is Deribit. We have to bring over people from Deribit. How do you do that? Well, derivatives traders are extremely sensitive to pricing and fees, right? And so, whereas someone that's trading swaps on Uniswap or through an aggregator like 1inch or DeFi Llama, they might not be so sensitive to fees. On derivatives trading, where there's a lot more activity on the both ways, especially if you're not buying and then holding to expiration, but you're actually trading in out of these positions multiple times during the life cycle, then a small difference in fees can actually play a massive amount into the P&L of that position. And so derivatives traders you're always competing on fees, right? And so that's one thing that kind of came to the forefront as we started to finalize the fee structure. And so we match Deribit on pretty much everything. There's a slight difference in that we don't charge any maker fees, and Deribit charges a little bit of a maker fee. And then if you take our maker plus our taker is the same as Deribit's, right? And then the only exception is on our exercise. So on our exercise, our fees are a little bit higher. Actually, I mean a decent amount higher than a Deribit. But if you're not holding to expiration, then that's not going to affect you. And the reason that we do that is because for our AMM to be composable, wherever that option settles at the very end, needs to have the exact same fee structure, right? And so there's different ways that we can incentivize users to come over. The ref fees, the referrals are going to have rebates. So essentially anything that you route over to our platform, you get a portion of the taker fees, and you can use that to refer yourself as well, right? And then also we have some token components on the utility side, whereas if you are staking a certain amount of tokens, then you also have like a drastic fee reduction. So there's a lot of ways that we are even more competitive than Deribit. I think the technology stack is there now that that you can get the economies of scale that you get with Deribit and you get with like having API programmatic, no cost cancel and corrects. We can do that on chain now. And so, yeah, the next, 6 months for us, that's what it looks like. It looks like scaling up, getting flow to move over from a centralized exchange to a decentralized exchange, and then working on the margin elements, right? Because like the isolated margin, our spec's fully done. It's just a matter of coding that up. We're going to, knock on wood, we'll have that done before the end of the year. Our spreads is already done. We'll probably have spreads, which will reduce the amount of margin that's needed within the system. We should have that by beginning of October. And then portfolio margin, which is like the holy grail in options. We're expecting in Q1. That one's going to take a little bit more. We need to battle test some of the isolated margin components first before we move over to portfolio margin, and then kind of build out the products, the fixed income products that play into isolated margin, and get people comfortable for that, and make sure that we have like appropriate like lending, like whether it be warehouse lending or we work with other protocols to get exposure and get people to lend into our pools. There's a little bit of business upkeep that we need to do, business development that we need to do before we can really turn on margin lending, or excuse me, cross margin or portfolio margin. But yeah, there's it's the technology. The change in technology is really what got us here.
Yeah. I think that's definitely apparent when you really look at where you guys have been and what you're building now. So far you've alluded to the order book on Arbitrum Nova as well as the vaults you guys have earlier. I would like to get like a quick explanation of range orders as well for the people. I think that's, in my opinion, that's like the most interesting component, besides like the fact that they all work together so well. Can you explain a little bit how those range orders work and why that's so exciting?
Yeah. So taking a step back, we built it in a layered fashion. The entire exchange is built in a layered fashion. So we have the base layer, which is the exchange layer, where all options are fully collateralized, right? So we don't, there's no situations in which that a position can't settle, or a person is, we have bad debt that gets accrued. Base layer, always fully collateralized. What's plugged into there is that's where everything that's been matched is cleared and settled, right? And then we have AMMs, which kind of work on top of that. And then I'll circle back to AMMs in a second with range orders. Then we have the vault layer, which plays on top of that, where we bring in the iVault surface from, a mature exchange like Deribit. We model it, we price it for users. So if you want to deposit in a vault and you want to passively collect yield, in that circumstance, you can deposit in a vault. They'll take in the parameters that's brought on chain. They'll price those options and sell them for you. Those are the underwriting vaults. So that's the same experience that you have in V2 right now, right? Whereas it's a pool to peer model. And then we have like the RFQ and the OTC order book, the stuff that's hybrid off chain and on chain. That's kind of abstracted away as we allow you to connect to it in a Web 2 fashion. However, from the matching and settlement and clearing, it all happens on the Web 3 layer at the base level. So circling back to AMMs. So in a traditional AMM, right, for Uniswap, you have asset A, let's say Ethereum, asset B, let's say USDC, right? And as those trade, the ratio of those two assets kind of moves around. In ours, you have the collateral asset, and then you have short options, right? So let's say in our example, we are going to deposit just Ethereum into a, let's say you have to pick the series. So let's say August 31st expiration, 2000 call Ethereum pool. And so you're saying, by depositing that liquidity, you're like, I will underwrite, options. So if people want to come in and buy call options, I'll underwrite them. So if they come in and they buy 1 ETH worth of a call option, they now have a long call option, and that ETH gets converted from collateral into a short call option. So you get this ratio of the short call options in the pool versus the collateral that it has not been utilized yet. And once it's utilized, it transforms into a short call option, right? And so there are going to be scenarios in which that maybe initially that first person that came in and they bought it for, let's say, the premium cost of 0.1 ETH. And then if there's more buyers than sellers, then when I deposited my collateral, I said, I will underwrite between this range, let's say between 0.1 ETH and 0.2 ETH. By the time it hits 0.2 ETH of a market price on the premium, I want to be fully allocated. So that's what the range order means. Is so if, let's say that I had only written, let's say I had, I don't know, 10 ETH I put in that pool, right? So the first one goes to 0.1, and then it's the range will slightly move over. The next one will be slightly more expensive, all the way till we get to 0.2, where all 10 of my ETH are now fully collateral or fully are sold. And I now technically in the pool is 10 short call options, whereas the person that came and bought them, they're long call options. Now, let's say that volatility moves and people decide to start selling those options back, right? And so at that point, what happens is they'll sell that long call option back into the pool. We will then close out the short option. We'll pare it down versus a short option, and then that will unlock the collateral in the pool. So now I have 9 short options, short call options, and 1 ETH of collateral. And so it goes all the way back. Let's say there's 9 more cells, and now we're back at the starting point where I have 10 ETH of collateral in the pool. The price is back at 0.1 ETH. However, I collected fees from 20 different trades there, right? All the buys and all the sells, right? And so that's where it's like an actual AMM that hasn't really existed before, right? So that range liquidity of what you're doing is saying, I'm willing to write within these 2 ranges. I want to be fully allocated when it hits this point. You can do full range, right? But you just won't be able to create as many trades in that range, right? So if you want to optimize and you want to say, I don't really actually want to hold any short call options at the end of this. I'm really looking to just buy and sell options while it's in this range, and then ultimately, hopefully the price comes back to where I deposited at, and then I can exit with all my collateral plus all the fees that I collected, right? So you're kind of incentivized to keep your range in a tighter area if you want to fully allocate, those collect all the fees on those 20 trades. If you were to do something more wide, then someone else could come in, and because it's similar to the Uniswap design of that, it will stack on top of each other. Someone else could come in and say, I'm going to write between 0.1 and 0.2, and you're now writing between 0.1 and 0.5. So they're going to get all that trading volume, right? I'm not going to get a lot of that trading volume. And so that's where the concentrated liquidity comes in. It's something that we spent quite a while getting tick sizes correct. And then it's not as easy as just looking at a Uniswap contract, because we have an entirely different dimension, which is time, right? We have to have the expiration, which is not something that's in a Uniswap pool, right? There is no expiration. It's just always a ratio of one to the other. Whereas ours, we have to manage that time element as well. So yeah, we're happy. We're excited about it. The permissionless pooling, we think that, you have to have permissionless pooling to really scale up in this space. There's so much volume that happens in the altcoin arena. And there's no one really utilizing, no one's really tapped into that yet, right? So we have to be able to scale that up. So you bring an Oracle, you either provide it yourself, you use a Chainlink Oracle, which we support completely out of the gate. Uniswap v3, we decided to not support fully out of the gate, even though we do have an adapter. Especially since we're on Arbitrum, there are some fundamental Arbitrum specific items that make it, I wouldn't say risky per se, but not up to our standards. So we're going to kind of wait for Uniswap v4 to come out for us to do Uniswap based oracles. However, we partnered with Redstone, which is a Oracle competitor to Chainlink, and so that we can spin up some of these prices that may not exist on Arbitrum in a quicker fashion if they don't necessarily meet the standards for a Chainlink Oracle. So there's a lot of different ways that you can build markets out. Yeah, that's going to be ready the first week of September when we go live. Referrals will be ready that week. It'll be exciting to see.
I think one cool thing that may have gotten lost in there is, on Premia, natively will support for permissionless pooling with the caveat that it has a Redstone or a Chainlink Oracle. But there's an adapter, an Oracle adapter, to where if you're using, I don't know, let's say we don't have Pyth natively supported or something, you have a Pyth Oracle, or you've created your own Oracle for an index that you have, you can create your own markets and still deploy those. And because of us using Arbitrum Nova, all of your orders are going to be displayed for you to be able to pull and index yourself. You could create your own native order book that only display the orders for the assets that you have through the Oracle adapter that you've created. You can create token lists. So I don't know, if you're a DAO, like a developer DAO, and you have a lot of projects that are kind of built within your group, and you want to have an options market for those, you have your own bespoke Oracle for those assets, you can do that. You can, set up your Oracle adapter to work with the markets, spin up markets for all of those assets on a spot exchange, and plug that all in, and then, create that natively to where you have a token list, and anyone with that token list can come onto Premia, import the list, and it will show all of your markets for all of your assets. Very similar to Uniswap and how you can go on there and import a token list and see a bunch of new markets that maybe Uniswap has either chosen to delist or just are not supported because of how new they are.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, definitely a lot to potentially dissect there. I think that the prospect of having like a concentrated liquidity AMM for something other than spot assets is like, I don't know that we've seen that yet. I think this would be the first one, not to mention the, also the first protocol to have an integrated order book using Arbitrum Nova. So I think the possibilities are pretty exciting. I also want to touch base on the token a little bit, or at least the changes going into V3. For those unfamiliar, V3 I believe is shifting from a normal standard liquidity mining model to an options liquidity mining model. Can you talk a little bit about like what the thought process was behind that choice, and like if you guys looked at I think there's maybe like 1 or 2 tokens live right now that have an options liquidity mining model. So I'm wondering if there was anything super compelling you saw there that led to this decision.
To be honest, we thought about this a couple years ago, but the issue was that Premia didn't have a Chainlink Oracle, so we couldn't really issue options for Premia in the fashion we wanted to. As well as V2 wasn't really designed for that, because like, yeah, you could issue them, but with the way the model was, like, you may be paying significantly more because of liquidity available than other people at like the time of exercision. So it was kind of necessary for us to have V3 to be able to do option liquidity mining the way that we had envisioned. Yeah, there are a few other models that are a bit different that exist. I know Andre Cronje had a write-up on an O token model, and I'm not sure if Tapioca based theirs off of that, but Tapioca has like O tokens and an option liquidity mining model. There's Timeless. Timeless has like O lit tokens. I know theirs aren't like true options, but it's still like the same concept. They may have been the first ones to do an option liquidity mining concept. So if they are, props to them. And then Bond Protocol, they were something that kind of came out of Olympus DAO. I know they're doing option liquidity mining as well. So yeah, I mean, I personally think that it is one way to maybe address, I don't know, the common path for traditional liquidity mining, which is like, people race to take advantage of high APY and free tokens, and like, they're just trading it back to the base asset they started with, either ETH or USDC, and it's just free money to them, or they think quote unquote risk-free money for them. So one way to kind of curb that is by adding different variables, and one of those is something options provides: time, set price, a cost to capital, things like that. And so I think like the model we have now is kind of a culmination of learnings over the last like few years.
Yeah, I'll add on that. So yeah, options has been something we've been looking at for a while. Like, we're an options platform, we should have options liquidity mining. But there were a few things that both the community had brought up, and then some things that we wanted to solve as developers as well, right? And so one of the biggest things the community always brings up is the dilution, right? So if I'm currently holding the token, then why, like, these liquidity providers are getting it for free, and then I'm fully diluted on it. There's there's not enough being made in the protocol fees to cover me locking up for a certain period of time. And so we solve that by implementing a physically settled model. So our peer-to-peer model in V1 was a physically settled model. What that means is that at exercise, if you choose to exercise, then you actually swap assets, so it's not cash settled, right? So in that circumstance of where I had 1 ETH and a strike of 2,000 USDC, you would give me 1 ETH, I would give you 2,000 USDC, right? It wouldn't be a cash settled difference between the price of, between the price of 2,000 USDC and whatever the current market price is, right? So that physically settled option, what we do is we if you are a liquidity provider, and also we felt like our V3 model has a lot more in terms of returns for liquidity providers than maybe our V2 model had been modeled out for, right? So we feel like we don't need to do as much on the, giving tokens away at zero cost, right? So what we've decided to do is we give you a at the money, or it's deep in the money, actually 50% the current trading price of the asset is what your strike is. Then at 30 days, you can choose to exercise or not. And if you choose to exercise, then you'll say, for example, in the circumstance of where Ethereum is 2,000, you would pay 1,000. That 1,000 goes directly to Premia stakers, so that dilution is then split evenly with the Premia stakers, right? So we solved that problem. Then also one thing that kind of sets us apart from the others is that we're going to have a secondary market, right? So if obviously we'll have Premia tokens, and we've set like certain parameters for what makes sense for us in our liquidity mining, but we built in completely modular fashion, and we can spin one of these up for anyone else in like almost zero time, right? Less than a week. And we just got to make sure that there's a proper oracle for you. But other than that, we built in a modular way. You can choose the fees to go wherever you want. You can go to your stakers. You can go to the DAO. You can, there's a bunch of different protocols that have tons of their native token, and they don't really know how to create yield on that, right? And so the 2 ways that you can, within our system, can do that is you can sell covered calls on the AMM, or you can implement a liquidity mining system in which that you're collecting the exercise cost on these options. Right. And so we'll also have a secondary market, right? So during the period between the date that they're written, and ours are set for 30 days, and the 30-day sell expiration, you can trade these. You can maybe, let's say you just want to get rid of them at 10 cents on the dollar and have someone else take over the obligation. Awesome. You can do that. It adds in some interesting game theory dynamics of having this option that's already like deep in the money, but then maybe you don't want to spend additional capital, right, to actually purchase these. And, maybe you're not liquid on USDC. And so, you sell them for a cheaper cost to someone else, or maybe, it could be a native Premia user that's just trying to get tokens at a cheaper price. So there's those elements of things. And yeah, like I said, like it's super easy for us to spin these up for other groups. And so I am, knock on wood, it's like this is one of our first offerings in the like protocol to protocol space, and it's not going to be the last, that's for sure. We want other protocols that were in situations that's similar to ours in the past of, what do I do with all these native tokens? I got to cover OpEx. Like, how do I do that? How do I generate yield on the tokens that I have? Or how do I do this without just negatively dumping it in an AMM, right? Which is the worst option out of all the different options. So it's a better solution than that. We think a lot of people will take it up. We have a few people that have reached out to us, and we're excited. We're excited about that as well. We spend a lot of time with our community. So we have in our governance process, we have a group of 10 elected members called Parliament, and we spent pretty much one of the tokenomics revisions that they wanted to address between pretty much April until August was this liquidity mining incentive, and how does it actually bring more of a fundamental return to current token holders, and why does it make sense to lock up for 4 years? Well, in the past, it was less of a reason, and going forward, there's definitely more of a fundamental reason.
Awesome. Yeah, you can definitely, just the community bit you mentioned there, I think you can definitely like see that in the Discord and on Twitter. People in the Premia community are like very much in the Premia community, which is like a very difficult thing to cultivate, I think, or at least it seems to be based off of how uncommon it is. So definitely props for that. I have like one more larger question, and then I want to give you guys a second in case there's anything we missed that you might want to get into, or any like call to action you have. So just like taking a step back a bit, we in our past episodes with other projects, we've talked a lot about the trade-offs between order books and AMMs. So like had like Drift or OX Perpon who were very much in favor of a hybrid model, or we had Aori on who was very, very much in favor of a pure order book. And then, you know, you've historically AMMs have been the more prevalent model, especially in the option space. I'm wondering like what issues you guys have faced in the past, given that you had both approaches, and kind of like how you struck a balance between the two, and why you think that it's like the best of both worlds without really too much of a sacrifice.
In like the simplest terms or thinkings, I think like AMMs allow tokens to kind of have their 0 to 1 moment and have fine price discovery, and order books are better fit for mature markets. You usually find that pricing becomes pretty centralized in regards to depth on order books around like especially for like options around specific strikes. And AMMs allow you to have a much wider range. So I think choosing a hybrid model, at least for options, you know, I can't speak on like perp and spot markets, but makes more sense because you're able to, you know, for this provide markets to a plethora of different user types. If you're a user that does not know how to price options and you just need a venue to price for you, you have the AMM that you can buy from that will source you the best price for that option that's available. And if you're someone that's building a more complex strategy and you're looking for specific option types, then you're able to go into the order book and, you know, pick the options that you want to build out the strategy that you're trying to trade or build in your portfolio. So that's why I think like in very like simple terms, like why a hybrid model for us like works the best. DK, you can go into, you know, whatever, however you feel on it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's composable, then I think that the hybrid makes the most sense, right? So professional or people that know how to price options correctly, or maybe more on the programmatic side, are going to want an order book because it gives them a little bit more flexibility. And especially if they can, you know, cancel and correct at a relatively cheap to zero cost, right? And in our model, I think that we allow like up to like $1 million at the cost of like $20 a month because we have like some API credentialing. But the fact that ours is composable, the way that it looks on the front end is we actually bring in all 3 inventory sources. So we have an inventory source of the AMM. We have an inventory source of what the vault is willing to underwrite at. And remember, the vault is essentially an algorithmic strategy, taking in multiple different variables. We bring them all on chain. And then we'll look at, you know, utilization of the AMM as well as like what the current, you know, price of that risk is. And it will give you a quote. But it's restricted to maybe, you know, certain products per se, certain series, right? It's not going to write you a 90-day call. It's only going to write, you can, these are parameters you can set too if anyone else wants to spin up a vault. But let's say that an IV of 45 and expiration of 30. And so like there's only certain, and only for ETH and wrap Bitcoin, right? So there's only certain things that will actually underwrite for. And then the third one is order book, right? So if someone already has a resting limit order, what happens is when you come to our site, if you were to go put those parameters in, I want to buy an Ethereum call quoted in US dollars. I want to buy 1 Ethereum of a call option. We will then bring those 3 different order or inventory sources to you, and then showcase to you, you know, which one is the cheaper one. Where we kind of took inspiration is from the aggregators, right? So like you go to 1inch or a DeFi, the Llama Swap, you put in a price, it'll tell you, okay, these are the 7 quotes that you're getting, right? You pick the cheapest one, it's sorted by the cheapest one. You click on that, you submit the order, you get the cheapest price, right? So ours is similar, whereas you have those multiple different inventory sources, and it's, you know, it's able to expand out to different inventory sources. I see a world where we're doing cross exchange integrations potentially. There's some interesting things that we're thinking about there, but bringing in multiple different inventory sources, so you can just come to us. We'll make sure you get the best price. And if it's highly illiquid, then there might be something on there. But if it's more of a liquid product, then there's going to be people competing for that, right? And as more groups or professional market makers kind of onboard onto our platform and just cross exchange between a Deribit and a Premia, for example, you're going to see those spreads come down, the depth of liquidity, go a lot deeper too, right? So, you get the benefits of decentralization. However, you might have to pay, a little bit more of a spread on the price compared to the Deribit, but you also, you get some, I don't know the right word, but there's some trade-offs obviously on the price, but you get some security in knowing that, everything is fully collateralized at the base layer. You don't have any real counterparty risk. Advantages.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm definitely more like in the hybrid camp myself as well, for a lot of the reasons you just stated, which I think is also why Premia Blue has been an interest of mine. I know we're over here, so we can start to wrap up. I just wanted to give you guys a second in case there's anything you want to promote, anything you think that the users should know, anything we might have missed, whatever.
I think one thing I'd like to highlight is just that if options are something that's new to you or you've been intimidated to get your feet wet in, we have an academy. It's completely the trading competition test isn't up anymore, right?
Correct.
All right, so it's completely platform agnostic. So if Premia isn't your platform of choice, it's not a problem. Or if you're wanting to go use like Lara, for instance, fine. Hopefully you come back to Premia, but you can go there and learn the basics of options through more complex strategies. And Marty, some people know him on Twitter. He's in the process of putting together a kind of masterclass that will go up there as well. They're really easy to read through. There's little quizzes at the end of every course that you can take to kind of test your knowledge. So it's a great way to kind of start learning the basics of options, start getting the hang of the terminology and feeling comfortable with, the things that you're looking at. If you're looking at any eyeball charts, you're looking at Velodata or Coinmetrics or something. But so there's the academy, and then I think everyone has been asking like when Premia Blue audits have been complete, so we'll be releasing it very, very soon.
2 weeks TM.
It's always soon. It's always 2 weeks.
Yeah. I want to reiterate the academy, like 90% of DeFi based academies is just like a blog article. Ours is definitely different than that. We have every course is made up of 5 different classes. Every class has a quiz. At the very end of the course, you have an exam. If you complete that, you get an NFT. The NFT is going to be integrated into the platform for certain cosmetic based improvements, especially when it comes to like referral addresses and sharing that. And so like we encourage everyone to do it. We, like he said, we have options 101 to, learning the Greeks to, something of a more advanced strategy, like a bull call spread or something. Right. And those spreads will be available on our platform, knock on wood, in roughly, 6 weeks from now. So, encourage you to go learn, like Cozy said, it's platform agnostic. Look, we're just trying to educate people. We think that most people in the crypto space, especially if you're already using a layer 2, like from a technical perspective, you definitely can learn options. I think that most people think it's more of like a speculative asset, when we're trying to kind of break down that barrier and demystify that it's not necessarily only for speculative use cases. You can lock in profits. There's a bunch of different things that you can do in an actual hedging environment that is not just speculative in nature. And we've been also trying to bring a lot more awareness to like volatility in general, like volatility as a concept, which I think that most people know that crypto is a volatile asset. What does volatility mean? They have no idea, right? And so we're like trying to bring that to the forefront. I think that the next major run up, I think, is when options will have its renaissance moment, its Robin Hood moment of crypto. And so we're just trying to get everyone educated in that space. And in the example I like to do is, between us and the competitors, we're not trying to, we're trying to bake bigger pies instead of gaining more of the same existing pie. So that's that. Take an academy course, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely +1 to that. I haven't gone through the courses myself too deeply, but just from the skimming I've done, it's definitely like the way that I learned options was just like scraping through Investopedia and like,
Many such
whatever
cases.
resources I could find. Yeah. And it's like it's not a fun or necessarily like friendly process. So the fact that you guys have like packaged it in a way that is really good to see.
That was the thing in the like kind of earlier days in our Discord. People would come and asking questions about options, and it was a lot of the like early community just sharing like Investopedia articles and videos from YouTube. So it was like, why when you think about UX, right? Like as a builder, like I know I said earlier my contrarian opinion about like for crypto, rough UX is sometimes like a good UX. But when you think about like a product for a user and like their user experience when they're there, um, having all of that there for them so they don't have to leave to go anywhere else is, like what everyone should kind of be thinking, like what will my user need to redirect for, and how do I make them not have to do that? So kind of trying to encapsulate like everything they need to do on Premia there on Premia for them is I don't know, kind of the angle that we're going for.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think that's a good spot to wrap up. Cito, unless you had anything you wanted to touch base on.
No, I think that's everything. I appreciate you guys for coming on. And that is episode 35. Thanks for everyone who tuned in and watched.
Appreciate the time, guys.